Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is a Monday. We weren't with you on Friday because I was driving through the plains of Kansas, the windy plains of Kansas, making my way just into Missouri so that I could do a little quilt shopping with my wife. A little celebration of my birthday in Quilt Town, USA. I sent you the pictures, Dennis. It was actually pretty charming. We found some fun restaurants, got to go to some cool old school diners along the way, saw some kind of cool small town feel. We took a real rural highway through Kansas, so it was pretty fun.
So do I foresee a handle change from you? Are you going to become the fantasy quilter?
Quilt Hawk. So no, my wife's big into, the nice thing is we support each other's, hobbies and yeah. So she supports me while I do all this and a lot of movie stuff. And sometimes we'll even go watch some dubious films with me because I got to go. But she's big into quilting. Sometimes you guys have probably seen patterns and stuff behind because we share the office workspace down here, and she'll put up whatever she's working on. But this, I guess, is like the quilting mecca. It's a little bit like what Magnolia did to Waco, kind of took over a small town and had they have like 19 different quilting stores in this downtown that they own. It was also the birth home of JCPenney. So it's like a JCPenney museum and, some quilt stuff. We stayed at a fun bed and breakfast.
To be fair,
Kansas City barbecue sauce. So I did not come away empty handed.
I mean, to be fair, David Koresh did some shit to Waco too. So, anyways, so, you mentioned, eating, stopping at cute little restaurants. So about several years ago, Jackie and I had a friend get married in Marin County out in Northern California. So we flew into San Diego and took Route 1 up the coast and stopped at all these little restaurants along the way. So when you and Lindsay are traveling, do you like to do that too? Do you like no chain restaurants?
Yeah, and you know what's amazing? So I was like Googling diners, and I found this travel book about Highway 36 in Kansas. Those little diners, first of all, I'm a big breakfast any time of day person, and those diners are 24-hour breakfast menus. So believe me, I partook. But also kind of makes you realize what a ripoff like Taco Bell and McDonald's are, because, you can go to a diner and two people, you got two pretty nice meals and drinks, and with tip, you're like $30.
Right.
That's pretty much two value meals at a fast food restaurant now. It kind of makes you reevaluate the experience.
Yeah, we have a restaurant in downtown Hilliard called Abner's, and we like to go there. They're a breakfast all day kind of place. Some only open for dinner a couple nights a week. The rest of the time, they're breakfast and lunch, and tasty food at a reasonable price.
Yeah, we went to. I like finding diners. We went to One just by the Kansas-Missouri border, and then on the way back, on the way there, I clocked a diner that was in one of those old like silver, looks like a Airstream kind of
Right.
setup that's 24 hours a day. It's 50s themed and everything. So we went there on the way back, and it lived up to my hopes.
Nice.
Well, speaking of hopes and living up to them or not living up to them, we have passed the deadline for fifth-year options and got some news over the weekend. None of it good for these guys that were hoping to be picked up. Not a big surprise, I'm guessing, for any of us, but Zach Wilson had his fifth-year option declined by the Broncos. Mac Jones had his fifth-year option declined by the Jaguars. Cowboys declined the fifth-year option for Trey Lance. The Chiefs declined the fifth-year option for Kadarius Toney, but I don't know if he caught that one. But probably the most surprising was the Steelers declining the fifth-year option on Najee Harris. If you would have told me one of the running backs from that class was going to get their fifth-year option picked up, I would have bet on Harris over ATN. But that is not what we got. How do these fifth-year option decisions?
So I'm not surprised at all about Zach and Mac and Trey. I mean, Trey Lance, usually you have to play in the league for 5 or 6 or 7 years before they deem you clipboard Jesus. I mean, he just came into the league, grabbed a clipboard, and has been collecting a paycheck ever since. I don't know if anything's ever going to become a Trey Lance. I know that there's no reason for anybody to pick up the fifth-year option on the number 3 overall pick that has not done. I mean, to be fair,
he's now a third-string quarterback in Dallas.
I mean, to be fair, Zach Wilson has been more productive than Trey Lance. I mean, that's how bad Trey Lance is.
I mean, Mac Jones has been. If you were talking about those 3 quarterbacks, Mac Jones is probably the most productive.
He really was. Now he fell off because of confidence, and his situation went to hell. Not that he was ever the most talented quarterback. He was a game manager style quarterback, a Derek Carr, kind of in that vein. A good year, you're looking at QB 15. A normal year, you're looking at QB 20 to 24. But something happened. They broke him in New England. And I feel bad for the guy. Maybe riding the pine behind Trevor Lawrence is going to be good for him. I mean, we thought it was going to be good for Mitch Trubisky in Buffalo, and all it led to was Mitch ending up back in Buffalo, backing up Josh Allen. So
maybe that is a good fit for him, though. I mean, we'll see what happens. I think also it's not shocking they would decline all these fifth-year options because for those quarterbacks who went high, it's like $25 million. And even if you want to retain those guys, they're not going to command anywhere near that amount of money.
I mean, to be fair, I'm surprised the Chiefs picked up Tony's 4th-year contract.
Yeah, I wasn't shocked about his. Najee Harris can be the interesting one to watch. A lot of people liken the situation to where Josh Jacobs was.
Mm-hmm.
There's every potential with them having invested heavily in the offensive line and having Arthur Smith that he has a killer season and they end up having to franchise tag him or having to eat it. But especially his fifth-year option total was $6.8 million. I thought that was kind of an interesting. That's not a huge chunk to swallow. But I've mentioned this before. It feels like the Steelers and Omar Khan have put himself in a position where if they don't like what they saw this year, they could actually just completely start over.
They maybe so. And next year's running back class, correct me if I'm wrong, looks like it's going to be substantially better than this year's. It
can't be worse than this year's. I think Travion Henderson comes out, right? So
he does.
And that would be
Jenkins and Nick Singleton.
Yeah. So, in a shot of other news, Jacoby Brissett said he is excited to battle to be QB1 in New England against that rookie Drake May. Gotta love his moxie. Do you had thought there was a chance he would end up starting for the Patriots some this season. Do you still feel that way?
It's a crapshoot. I mean, we hear a lot about Drake May just not quite being as ready and stuff, but they drafted him at number 3. I think New England feels very comfortable with May's readiness for the NFL. He's got a prototypical body, arm strength. He's mobile. I wouldn't be surprised a bit if Brissett is riding the pine week 1. It's really, we just don't know with the team in New England with Mayo and who is it? Van Pelt, is that their
Van Pelt.
And they don't have squat for wide receivers unless somebody suddenly pans out. They have Ramondre Stevenson, and that's great, and Hunter Henry, and we know what he is. But the wide receiver core needs work. The defense is pretty good. So I think in a perfect world, I'd like to see May sit and get some seasoning, but it's not a perfect world. And these guys come in highly regarded, and they're making money from day one. And so I'd like to see Brissett start. We'll see we're coming up here in a week or two on the schedule release.
Yeah, they haven't given an exact date of when they're going to release the schedule yet, but it's got to be soon. They're hyping it and advertising it like crazy. And I feel like last year it was the second Thursday in May, which would have made it the 9th. But
so it should be soon. So we'll know if New England has, say, a week 6 bye. Would anybody be surprised if May's the starter week 8?
No. Yeah, so it says they haven't given a specific date yet, but if history is any judge, it should be Thursday, May 9th. So I guess we'll find out. Odell Beckham Jr. signs a 1-year, $3 million deal with the Dolphins. I actually kind of like this move. The Dolphins have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They added Jonnu Smith. They picked up a couple of interesting receiver prospects. They have some great running back room. OBJ could be the kind of weapon they need to push themselves a little bit further up in the AFC.
So what Miami did not have was somebody that could step in if Hill or Waddle went down and be considered potentially, and I don't know if I'd consider OBJ elite anymore, but very, very good. And while I don't know that OBJ can hold up for 17 games, as your wide receiver 3 and a guy who may start 6 or 7 games for you in a pinch because Hill or Waddle get dinged up, I think it's a great move. I think he sees the writing on the wall. He's 30 or 31 now. He's been injured a lot, and he's looking for winning teams. He wants to get a Super Bowl. And there's no shame in that. Go somewhere, compete, keep racking up playoff and Super Bowl victories by being a good teammate and making plays when you're called upon. He just doesn't have the stability is the word that comes to mind for me, but that's not what I want to say. He just doesn't stay healthy with the repeated beating of being a starter. He doesn't have that anymore.
Yeah, and you're right. He is 31. The rest of the depth chart, if you can call it that, for the Dolphins would be Eric Ezukanma, River Craycraft, Braxton Perrios, Anthony Schwartz, rookies Malik Washington and Taj Washington, and Jaquan Burton. They also have Braylon Sanders, Matthew Sexton. So I think this is a good move that really strengthens the top of their depth chart there. Still a narrow funnel, though. So for fantasy, unless one of those other guys get injured, I am not feeling like OBJ is a player I'm throwing in my lineup.
That is correct, sir.
Four other signings. I'm going to throw these out there, and I'll let you tell me which one of them intrigues you the most. DJ Chark signed with the Chargers. Jalen Guyton signed with the Raiders. Chase Claypool signing with the Buffalo Bills, and your boy Rashad Penny going to the Carolina Panthers. Boy.
So the one I like is DJ Chark, and that's because it's just wide open there. And he's going to be able to step into that deep threat role. He's not going to get volume. Unfortunately, he may get very little volume because Harbaugh's propensity to want to run the ball. But he's going to, if he can stay healthy, he's somebody that may be a wide receiver 4 or 5 for you that can start at a low-level flex for you. Chark does some things really well. He runs fast and he's big. Other than that, it comes down to, Jalen Guyton. I don't think that moves the needle. He's popped off a couple times, but never had any consistency. Chase Claypool makes people miss Gabe Davis. He just isn't very good. And
that's the one that I was most interested in, probably for the same reason that you latched onto the Chargers. I think it's fairly wide open. The question is whether he's too much of a head case because I think that's what kind of hurt him with Chicago. And it definitely, we never really even saw him do anything in Miami. I was kind of curious to see what the Miami experience would be, being able to get long bombs and stuff, and he never got on the field. So,
Chase Claypool is a big, fast wide receiver that is not good at contested catches or route running in short area. It's a match made in hell. So, I don't think Claypool is going to be a reasonable threat to anybody currently on the Buffalo team. There's no there. Now, Rashad Penny, that's another story altogether.
Well, however you feel about Rashad Penny is one thing, but now, they drafted Jonathan Brooks, they have Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders. What are we doing here? And
I think they're cutting Miles Sanders, and Rashad Penny's going to be their RB3.
You think they're going to release Miles Sanders?
I think they've soured on. They were certainly soured on him last year, and it's a new regime with no ties to him. So they brought in Jonathan Brooks, who's their guy. They saw Chuba Hubbard be productive last year and productive the year before in a backup role. And from all we've seen, Hubbard's a team guy. So maybe he wants to carry the ball more, but I think he's a guy that will not make it a lot of waves if he's the number 2. And we've seen Penny, as good as he can be, he's okay collecting a paycheck, and all of a sudden, he'll be inactive for 14 games, and then he'll go out and rush for 700 yards in 3 games.
I think that backfield's going to end up being a little bit of a mess, and people that have reached on Jonathan Brooks, he's also coming off of an injury, so there's no guarantee he's fully ready to go. I don't know.
But they invested in their offensive line. They signed 2 high-profile guards. They drafted Icky.
And they invested in receiver, too. They went and got Deontay Johnson. We may not love Xavier Legette, but they brought him in. So now you have Mingo and Legette, young guys learning. You have Thielen, who looked pretty good last year, and Deontay Johnson, who's the best receiver in their group. They went and got Jatavian Sanders at tight end. They have Tommy Tremble. They have a lot of options. Maybe that's their building method. He's given himself a ton of options at every position, and let's see how it shakes out. Well, speaking of seeing how it shakes out, on last month, Tuesday, We did a single QB mock to see how things were going. Today we fired it up and we did a super flex mock. And rookie draft season is alive and well. I'm sure, Dennis, you've done a few. I've finished a few, going along. So we're seeing where values are right now. So super flex, as you would expect, we got quarterbacks going. Not as many in the first round as I thought we might get, though. So 101, Caleb Williams, pretty easy call. Marvin Harrison goes at 2. Jaden Daniels at 3. I've seen that in pretty much every super flex rookie draft that I've done now here. Feels like kind of they're locking in there. I personally would probably take receivers, Neighbors and Odunze above the next tier of quarterbacks. That's what happened in this one. Neighbors goes 4, Odunze goes 5, then Drake May at 6. I was up at 7. I looked at JJ McCarthy, but ended up going with Xavier Worthy, who I currently have kind of as my 4th receiver. McCarthy goes right behind me. Then Brock Bowers goes at 9. Ladd McConkey, this is where, the back end of the first and into the second receiver seems to fall a little bit along personal preference. McConkey goes at 10. Then we saw one running back, Jonathan Brooks, go at 11. And Brian Thomas goes at 12. Seen him going in the first pretty consistently, off in the back of the first, sometimes, 5th to 7th receiver off the board. Dennis, any surprises for you in this first round?
I think the Worthy pick is a surprise. To me, it is eerily reminiscent of the rise that another Kansas City Chief had when he was drafted there, and that's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I couldn't bring myself to draft Xavier Worthy over Brock Bowers, and I don't know that I'd draft him over J.J. McCarthy. And then it just feels like we're hoping against hope that he becomes his archetype receiver, suddenly gets a bunch of volume. And I just don't know that I'm buying that at the 107. If I were sitting in your spot, I'd have been all over Brock Bowers falling to me. That would have been my pick. I'd have ran to the podium to make that pick.
See, this is kind of where you and I, we've gone a little bit different, and maybe it's too, I did spend 12 hours with the college football guys during the draft, picking their brain a little bit. They were very high on Worthy, and I've sort of come around on that being a different kind of receiver. With CEH, we just saw him fly to 101, and Sky Moore flew up into the top 5. I don't think that he has come up that much. He's come up to be the next tier of receiver behind the top 3 receivers, and in a draft where we didn't have great running backs, that's not terrible. I also, I'm not entirely sold that McCarthy plays all of the first year. There's a lot of talk they may let Darnold start. I have more questions about McCarthy. I also have great questions about Bowers based on his landing spot. We saw the Raiders go up and take a tight end high last year and do nothing with them. We also, you and I were just talking beforehand, I don't believe in their quarterback room. I'm not sure I believe in their offense. Luke Getsy didn't do a whole lot for me when he was with Chicago. They still have Devontae Adams. They seem to be collecting 1 million receivers. I don't know what they're doing at running back. I think Bowers is fine, but I'm not racing to put Bowers up there. We saw what happened with Kyle Pitts, a good talent that went to a suboptimal offensive situation in the NFL, and I think this is the same thing for Bowers.
I get the argument, but I just think that the comparing drafting Mayer to drafting Brock Bowers, it's like Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. Yes, they're listed at the same position, but they don't play the same position. And I agree with you on the quarterback situation. It's going to be tenuous at best, but I think that given that there's not a lot of weapons in Las Vegas, I think Bowers has the opportunity to be, a top 2 or 3 weapon for that team. So, I'm still in on Bowers. For me, it isn't about maybe moving Worthy up to that tier. It's more about moving Bowers down. And I just don't think I could do that. I agree with you with McCarthy. But, we've seen Sam Darnold faceplant, 3 times now? So are we really going to be surprised if, the not starting all the games this season is McCarthy starting 16 or 15 games?
Well, and even, if he comes in, what are we going to see?
So let me ask you this. Who starts more games, McCarthy or May? You're standing in Vegas at the sports.
I think May.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable choice.
But I also feel bad for May because his offensive skill position.
I mean, he's riding a turd in the bowl.
Yeah. So moving to the second round, Knicks goes at 201. Kind of interesting because the guy that had the 101 certainly gave himself a lot of shots. Ends up taking 3.
Yeah, he's rebuilding a quarterback, isn't he?
Yeah, he took 3 quarterbacks in. But 2 of them, I think you'd reasonably say are probably development quarterbacks. Knicks is another one. I suspect he's going to go in the first round in a lot of these super flex drafts. I've seen him go in the first round a lot, but I don't know if he's a lock to start all season either. It's so hard to tell, and I don't know if he has a great supporting cast. But he goes at 1, then Coleman goes at 2. Adonai Mitchell goes at 203. Michael Penix at 204. I'm going to say it again. That's way too high for me for a guy that I don't expect to see for 3 years. Leggett goes at 5. Trey Benson, the second running back, comes off at 206. I think that's pretty good value for him. When it came back to me, I took Troy Franklin. I looked at Pearsall. I thought about that. I looked at Corum. I thought about that, but I decided to take Franklin. Pearsall goes right after me. Corum then goes at 9. Ben Stinnett goes at 10. A lot of people getting higher on him. I've seen him start to pull up. Potential opportunity in Washington, the same way we saw kind of for Trey McBride, who ended up as a rookie getting drafted behind Zach Ertz. Javon Baker, I was kind of surprised he went so high up there in the second round. And then Jalen Wright, the speedster, I'm guessing by the logo that our friend there at 12 is a little bit of a Miami fan. I didn't think that was too bad of a pick there at the end of the second round either. But what did you think of this second round?
So I think it was fairly chalky, I guess. I went with A.D. Mitchell, and he's an immensely talented player that has some effort issues, at least by appearances. It looks like effort. There's some talk about, it was diabetes and he was, this, that, and the other. We'll have to wait and see. He landed in a spot where I don't think he's going to overtake Michael Pittman. And then Josh Downs is always going to be carving out a role for himself. And you got Jonathan Taylor, but I like the talent of Mitchell. I agree with you about Penix, but I do think Penix is the more talented of the second round quarterbacks. And so if you're, we talk a lot about, in Dynasty, you're playing for today and tomorrow. And so if you're building depth and you look at this and you're like, well, I don't see, there's no surefire running backs. We're down into tier 3 of the wide receivers. I believe in the quarterback. So I don't know that I agree with you. I don't think I'd take him there. But I could see that. I was a little puzzled to see, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 running backs go before a guy that was widely regarded as the RB4-ish. So with Corum going, Corum is going as RB3. he's another guy that I think we're waiting in the wings for Kyron Williams to break. So we've seen how McVay uses his running backs. And so the expectation is that they're going to keep feeding Kyron Williams the ball until he can't take it no more. And then they're going to do the same thing to Blake Corum. I'd be surprised if we see anything close to a 60-40, 65-35 even split at the running back position. Sennett's been climbing up boards. I think he was held in regard, I think, as the number 2 for a while, and then Sanders with some athletic ability kind of moved past him. But it feels like Sennett may be the guy you want out of those two. And then Javon Baker, to hear him talk, he can't believe that Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze were drafted before him.
Well, and he may end up being the better of the Patriots receivers, but he wasn't taken that way. We'll go into the third round here. Jalen McMillan goes at 1, Audric Estime at 2. Some people, have gotten higher on that. I don't know what to believe. Roman Wilson then goes, Jermaine Burton, Malachi Corley. I'm shocked to see him drop that far. Jalen Polk. I ended up taking Ray Davis when I was looking at running backs. I liked his landing spot in Buffalo, so I took him there. Will Shipley goes, and then Marshawn Lloyd, who I think you were referencing. The talent is decent, but I just did not like the landing spot. Vidal kind of felt like a little bit of a reach there at 310. Then Jatavian Sanders, then Bucky Irving at 12. So, with Baker at 11, it's just when I'm looking, I would have taken McMillan, Wilson, Burton, and Corley all over him. I would probably have taken Polk over him too, because the Patriots came up in the second round to get Jalen Polk. I don't mind taking a shot on Baker, but I would not have it's just the location. I might have even taken 4th rounder guy Tez Walker over him.
Yeah, I like that Javon Baker is showing a bunch of fight. He's coming out of the gates hot, and you know what they say, it's not bragging if you can back it up. So with Polk and Baker and Drake May, we have the potential of a team that may grow like we saw in Green Bay. They invested over a 2-year span. They invested in 5 or 6 wide receivers and a couple tight ends to all grow with Jordan Love, and it looks like it's working. I really wrestled with Roman Wilson and Jermaine Burton because I love Jermaine Burton, and I was like, I didn't really think he would come back to me, but I also didn't think he'd be like the immediate pick after I drafted Roman Wilson. But I kind of like where Wilson landed. He has an opportunity to be that complementary piece to what George Pickens does. I think Pickens had almost 1,100 yards last year. And he's going to keep being that downfield threat and that alpha wide receiver. And to offset that, you need someone like Roman Wilson that's quick and fast and can get in and out of breaks in the short area. And that's what Roman Wilson does. Burton, he's going in with a chance to be Cincinnati's wide receiver 3 in a high passing volume offense and potentially become their number 2 next year, because I just don't see Cincinnati signing T. Higgins to an extension or franchising him for a second year. Could be wrong, but I just don't see it. So it feels like Burton has a prime opportunity to move into a top 40 fantasy relevant role. I'm not 100% sold on Polk. I like Ray Davis a lot, so I don't hate that. But as much as we might not like Lloyd landing in Green Bay, he's a carbon copy of Aaron Jones, and we've seen Aaron Jones be successful for several years. Now, that means they'll probably bring somebody in to pair with him, but we could see Marshawn Lloyd step into that role, and who knows, they might decide that guy is Josh Jacobs when we're all sitting around thinking Jacobs is going to be a bell cow. But Jacobs' contract is structured as such that it's really a series of one-year contracts, and they can get out of it after this year relatively cheap. If Jacobs has a fantastic year,
$10 million in dead cap to get out of it after this year.
And that's not an untenable amount. So it's not ideal, but it's certainly not untenable. And if they designate him as a June 1 cut, it would be significantly less, I believe.
No, I'm looking at Spot Track. That's why I pulled it up.
But I like Lloyd. I wouldn't have taken Estime ahead of Lloyd, though I'm warming up to Estime because we've seen Sean Payton use that two-back set with a bruiser like Mark Ingram and somebody like Alvin Kamara. You know, they've got a Kamara type, I think, in Javonte Williams. But they don't really have the bruiser, Samaje Perine, despite being 230 pounds. That's not his gig. Jaleel McLaughlin, I think he's a Jag.
Well, so I think a lot of the hype for Estime is coming too from some of the reports or thought that Perine could end up being the cap casualty or during training camp.
Yeah, we're gonna, we'll see a lot of moves come up there. So there's gonna be a ton more movement as we get to the season. It's weird now because they really only have one cut down date in preseason, right?
Yeah, I think they cut like 6 players after one game, but it's mostly everything at the end now, which makes it a lot more interesting, I guess.
The guy that I feel pain for is Will Shipley. I feel like if he landed in the right spot, he maybe could have, been relevant, but he's behind Saquon and isn't going to be.
Well, that's where I agree with you that I would have taken Lloyd over Estime, and I probably would over Jalen Wright and Shipley. Just went to go look because I don't think I have him that far down.
Jalen Wright is an investment in 2025. You have to think that Raheem Mostert's going to do his thing this year. He's going to be 32 years old, and Jalen Wright's the replacement for him. Devon Achane will be that satellite back, get touches, be explosive, maybe the more fantasy relevant guy, but Jalen Wright will step in, I think, in the Raheem Mostert role.
Bring it to the last round. We saw Spencer Rattler, 7th quarterback. None went in the 3rd round. He goes top of the 4th. Same guy ends up taking Williams, Nix, and Rattler. Like you said, obviously rebuilding that quarterback room. Braylon Allen going at 402. I actually thought that was a pretty good deal down there. Rasheen Ali going at 3. Jordan Travis, another interesting one just because of where he went to the Jets. They have 2 very older veteran quarterbacks. Development guy that'll get to sit behind them. I would have liked Michael Pratt to go to the Jets, but we can't always have nice things. Malik Washington, then Theo Johnson. I ended up getting Eric All. Sleeper actually booted me out. And by the time I got back in, the draft was over. So I don't think that's terrible, though, that maybe potential at Cincinnati tight end. I would not have probably take them there. Then we saw Tez Walker, Brendan Rice, Luke McCaffrey kind of going there at receiver. Tyrone Tracy, and interesting, the only running back that the Giants took, and it's not like they have a great room. And then Dylan Lobb, I kind of like him as a flyer late in drafts in Las Vegas. So any picks you really like there in the final round?
Well, I love the Rasheen Ali pick. I think that he's probably, again, a future investment. I don't think he's going to get a lot of run behind Derrick Henry. But I do think that next year I could see an Ali Keaton tandem, the show is Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews, and we get that. And yes, I know if you're watching this, I realize it was me that picked Rasheen Ellie. I'm not sure about Theo Johnson, and I kind of agree with Eric All is an interesting player just because Cincinnati's got to do something at tight end. What they've been doing hasn't been working since they let CJ Uzomah go. And I just want to you just need somebody to go in there that can play at a decent level consistently, and All may be that guy. Tez Walker, he's got some hands issues, and Brendan Rice, he doesn't quite click. Luke McCaffrey, he switched over from quarterback, and he's a developmental guy. My big concern with Tyrone Tracy is this. So if you think back over the last several years, we love these big wide receivers that transition to running back. But what we're finding is that, the reason Antonio Gibson was probably a better running or wide receiver in college than he was running back was because he doesn't have great vision. And Tony Pollard doesn't really hold up well to the beating. And now here we are with Tyrone Tracy at 6'1" and 210 that only played 1 year of running back in college. And we're all hyped for him to come in and grab some role. And maybe it's my roster shares of Eric Gray speaking, but would I like to see Tracy do well? Sure. I just drafted a share of him today, but I'm going to be a little bit skeptical until I see him transition and be able to really perform in that role.
So I think Tracy, as a flyer at the end of the fourth round, makes sense. I've seen some people going up and getting him I've seen him go as early as late second. That's a little crazy to me. Johnson, I think a lot of his value is maybe predicated on whether or not Waller actually retires. And a few weeks from the draft, we still don't have a serious answer. It seemed like they took that day that the news broke that he was retiring, they were on the clock almost immediately right away and took Johnson. He was somebody that had risen up the kind of tight end depth charts after combine action. I just, in the fourth round, that sort of makes sense to me. A lot of these guys in the fourth round are worth taking shots on. Allen could be interesting too, if something happens to Breece Hall or I like him as a number 2 back better than Abanikanda. I was listening to a Jets beat reporter while I was driving through Kansas this weekend who suggested that the reason the Jets took 2 running backs in the draft is they were not very happy with the way Abanikanda picked up the offense or didn't pick up the offense and the blocking schemes, and that was meant to be if you want to stay here, you need to step up your game. Otherwise, we might be happy to just take other people.
Yeah, I could see that.
So, I think in the fourth round, you're taking darts
in this draft, especially.
Yeah. Well, that'll do it for this mock draft. That'll do it for today. We will actually be back with you tomorrow. We started a startup dynasty about a week ago. Hasn't progressed as far as I thought it might, but there's always tomorrow to make some good progress. But we'll look and see where an actual dynasty is going. Dennis and I are in it, so we will talk about some of our strategies. Dennis has made a couple of trades, so be curious to hear about that. But give you a feel for, it's not just rookie draft season. People are out there hopping into new leagues as they find out that some of their previous leagues are winding down or sunsetting. I know that's been the case for me too. So
is that why you started this league?
No, I thought it would be fun. I actually have not done a startup, I think, in 4 years.
Okay.
3 years.
I haven't
5 years.
Oh, it's probably been about, I think 3 years for me, maybe 4. And this year, the other startup that I did was actually, this is my third one. One was a reset of an Empire League, so we redrafted. And then Just Josh started a league, and for whatever reason, I joined. And then you did this one, and I was like, why not?
Yeah, I just thought instead of just doing another startup mock, let's see if there were people, because we had gotten a couple of requests, or I had gotten a couple of requests off of the league site about, do you know of any? Are there going to be any? Thought it could be fun.
As a matter of fact, I do.
Like I said, I haven't done it. I think it's been four seasons. I've taken a couple of orphans, which that's always fun doing that project, but it'll be fun. Looking forward to chatting about that. And then on Friday, we are going to start our unit grades with the NFC quarterback rooms. So that's always going to be a little bit of fun. I'll be curious to see where Dennis lands with his. I've been working on my looking at the charts and looking at depth charts today, and there are some intriguing options out there.
So how many rookie drafts have you done so far?
Let's see how many have completed. So I have two that are I have one that's still currently ongoing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 have completed, and then I have one that starts on Thursday. But the one I keep forgetting that just completed, I had traded all my picks. So
yeah, I've got a 16-team league, and I'm the commish, and so we're drafting. My first pick is the 5'11", so I'm just kind of hanging out, processing people's trades. I've got a bunch of veterans nobody wants to trade for. I'm trying to get into rebuild. So I'm like, come on, somebody take Joe Mixon off my hands. Anybody want Nick Chubb?
That was the one that just it just completed. I didn't even know it was complete because like I said, I didn't have any picks. I had traded them all away. I'm the commissioner in there, so I had to start it. And I had 3 different people make a mistake, fat finger the wrong player, and they're like, "Hey, we need you to stop us." I'm like, guys, I'm not even really following this all that closely because it's on Sleeper and I don't have to chart anything. Can you make your picks? Mm-hmm. But well, that'll do it for us today. You won't have to wait very long. We will be back tomorrow looking at that Dynasty startup and some strategies. Until then, hope you guys have a wonderful evening.
Arrivederci.